The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted urucane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. A dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey you, yeah you, I'm talking to you. Welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is Andre Mayette, your podcast host. Big thanks to Uka the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another fun-filled show. Today I talk with Dorian Sr, who has been a part of comics, part of the toy industry, a part of the martial arts industry. He's been all over. He's done a lot. And we get into it. We talk about it, and it's a great conversation. But it is a longer than normal one. And sometimes in the past, if they've broken 2 hours, I will break it into two. This one didn't, so I'm just going to make it an extra long episode. But because of that, I'm not going to give you much of an intro. You don't need it. What do you need it for? You know me, you know the show, you know what's going on. You don't need to hear me complain or talk about my life one more time. I'll save that for the next episode. But yeah, it's a great chat. If I had to say there's a theme to this conversation, it would be drive. Ambition and drive to push yourself to get the things you want out of this life and to work hard to achieve them. And Guy has certainly done that and then some. He's been all over. We could have talked even more because he has his hand in a lot of industries and worked on a lot of projects and done quite a bit. But I talk as much as I can, and we do have a lengthy conversation. So because of that, I'm not going to talk anymore. I think we should just get into it. Here's my chat with Dorian Sr. I was going to say, you look like you know your audience. You have a Mounties versus Wolverines picture right there.
Oh, werewolves. Mounties versus
werewolves. Oh, werewolves. Awesome.
I wish it was versus Wolverines.
I'm Canadian, so obviously I'm in Nova Scotia. So the Mounties,
okay.
Mounties
Yeah,
obviously.
I don't know much about Mounties, but Larry's the writer. I'm not the writer. I'm the illustrator. So and co-designer of characters and such. And yeah, I got my werewolf. He's here in my studio all year round anyway. So
I'm a massive fan of all of the horror stuff. That's awesome.
Oh, I have tons of horror stuff. My whole downstairs is all horror stuff. It's comics and stuff also, but it's I have I think about 15 to 20 animatronics.
Wow, really? Oh man. I as you can see, some of it behind me, I have some Gremlin stuff. I'm a huge fan of them. I have an Alien back here. There's Infinity Gauntlet. There's a lot of horror stuff.
Some stuff from what's the name of that movie up on the wall there with the horns?
Oh, Pan's Labyrinth, yeah.
Pan's Labyrinth, that's it.
Yeah, a friend of mine's a really talented artist. He had done that for me as a gift. I think it was for my birthday or for Christmas. And this one is actually a picture he did of me. I was in a stage play I directed and was in where I played the creature in a version of Frankenstein.
Oh,
and
cool.
So he did a version of me in the makeup with like the bolt, like all the staples in the head and stuff.
Yeah.
The design was kind of close-ish to like the way De Niro looked like him in the Kenneth Branagh movie, kind of. It was sort of, I had the big cloak and everything and kind of was, but it was a very literal adaptation of the book. So the creature talked and there's whole scenes and all that kind of stuff. So it was probably one of, if not the most rewarding, acting experience I've ever done. Cause I obviously really like that character and love that book and this, everything that's come of it. So it was really, really cool to be able to do that.
Very cool. Cool.
That's awesome. Where are you calling in from?
I'll keep my actual location.
Sure.
But I'm in the East Coast, US.
Awesome. Right on.
Yeah,
Cool. Were comics always a big part of your childhood growing up?
I guess I when I was about I knew about it and all and everything. And cartoons, they made those cartoons from the comic books and stuff back in the 60s. And I was By the time I got into comics, I was about 8 or 9. So those had already been out for a few years. So I obviously had seen those things on TV and such like that and saw comic books. But when we were at the store and they were on spinner racks at the convenience store, here comes Kitty. Um,
Oh yeah.
uh, at the convenience store, we would see them, but we weren't actually purchasing them yet. But it was like um, we were we actually were doing martial arts when we were like young.
Really?
So by the we were into that, and then we started getting comic books at about 9, a few years after that. And then me and my twin brother.
Hmm.
Uh, and so then we started collecting comics, during that. We didn't leave martial arts, but we were doing comics then. We were started collecting them and getting them. We didn't really have anything. We were super, super poor, grew up in a tenement and
Hmm.
everything, and assistance from the government and all that. My mother was a single mom with 6 children.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
but we had an aunt and an uncle who had no children and did quite well for themselves. They were across town, and on the weekends, for the most part, not every weekend, but on the weekends for many years, they would pick us up and we would spend time with them. My
Oh,
mother
that's
would have
lovely.
time to herself, and it, it was the time that they would say, "Hey, would you like something? We'll buy you some McDonald's with stuff we didn't normally get because
Hmm.
we usually ate, my mom bought whatever she could, but usually it was like foods that were old and marked down or
Hmm.
something like that, and we didn't have, it was a lot of spaghetti and onion soup disguised as chicken noodle and stuff like that, but
Yeah,
my aunt and uncle, they had the funds, so they would buy us comics, Well, mostly my aunt would take us out to do that.
that's
And
awesome.
yeah, yeah. So we got into comics, and ever since then, we've been in comics.
Wow. Was the martial arts something that was like a response to sort of the area you lived in, or is it just something you're always interested in as well as a kid? Or
I tend to, wherever I go, wherever I move, wherever um, I fall into things.
hmm
Uh, and in second grade, there was a kid who moved into our school. I don't know if he was directly from China or recently from China, but I was helping him out in school and we became friends and he took me to his house. And it just so happens they lived, half a mile away. And we would go there to hang out. And the first time we went there, we found out that everyone there was doing kung fu. We didn't know much about it. But the older brother said, "Would you like to learn?" But really broken English. Like,
Yeah.
and when I say uh, they were from China and Chinese home, I mean, most of the time we just heard, I believe it was Mandarin.
Hmm.
It was Cantonese in the house. I guess somebody spoke in, but it was mostly Mandarin. And the TV shows that we hung out there constantly, and the TV shows were all Asian TV shows, Chinese betas or whatever they called it back then. They had some things on video, some kind of video thing or whatever. I don't know how they tapped into some kind of, there was only like 5 stations, but they had some, I guess it was mostly videos, whatever it was, we were watching because we were only 7. But we started learning martial arts there.
Wow.
And that continued from then for all my life.
Wow. That's amazing. It's rare
Yeah.
that usually it's like just coming across some dojo somewhere in your town. It's rare that you actually, come across a family that are all practicing it and willing to
It
share that
was
knowledge.
it was like a movie. It was literally like if you could make a story for a movie, how some, you know, white kids uh growing up in a extremely uh uh harsh area uh could come across, you know, Miyagi.
I was gonna
But
say,
Miyagi was Japanese.
yeah.
They're Chinese, but still, you know what I mean
Oh
to
yeah,
the
yeah.
audience listening. So we were, it was just part of our life, and it's been a part of my life ever since. So
That's
it's
amazing.
about 40, 43.
Yeah.
48 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, martial arts is such a discipline, as far as a martial art, but as far as like giving you a nice guideline to just format your life and find a way to live within it that I found. I've never been involved in much. I did a little bit when I was a kid, but I've kind of fell into professional wrestling, which is something I also do now, which I wanted to talk to
Oh,
you about.
really?
I saw you did some artwork for some of those old toys and stuff, which is very cool.
Well, yeah, not to jump forward or anything,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah, I think I was 24, 25, something
Yeah.
like that. When I started working for well, I had been working for toy companies. No, I started working for toy companies at 24.
Hmm.
I was 25 years old when I started working on the with Titan Sports,
Hmm.
which is the WWF at
That's
the
right.
time,
Yeah. Yep.
and Vince McMahon, and working with their team to put out a line of not flat bendable figures, but sculpted more like action figure bendable figures.
Hmm.
And even at that age, I was like 23 when we started designing it. But I was the lead designer, not I wasn't just drawing stuff, I was designing it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from scratch. An entire line that would last years. Kept the company going when the company was falling apart from whatever bad business it was doing,
Hmm.
or just whatever the economy was or whatever. Um, and I wound up doing the designs for Undertaker and Shawn Michaels and Goldust and Mark Moreau and uh, Psycho Sid, who just passed away,
Yeah.
um, British Bulldog, and a bunch of others, um, and Diesel and Razor Ramon and a bunch of those guys, 1, 2, 3 Kid, and so those became like I had no idea that those things were like, because I was older then, I wasn't buying toys.
Hmm.
But what I didn't know was the 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds, the people who watched wrestling then who were young and even adults were buying them and
Oh,
hoping for them. And they went on for years. So um, it was like a couple of years ago, my son had seen something, Matt Cardona had been and the Major Figs podcast had been talking about the beloved figures and their favorite all-time figures, and they were a lot of them were all what I designed.
yeah.
And so I had gone online to see if anyone else was talking about this, and somebody had posted one of the figures, and I had posted a comment for the first time. Hey, wow, I really had fun doing these, designing these. And then that guy messaged me, and then another person, and another person, and another person. And I got bombarded with messages like, oh my God, you made my childhood. Those were my favorite figures of all time. I had every single one. And it just kept going on and on and on. I had no idea.
Yeah, they're
I,
amongst the wrestling community, like people that collect the toys. I was never a big toy collector of wrestling stuff when I was a kid, but they're still huge. Like they're very collectible and very interesting because they were like one of the first ones to actually look like the wrestlers. A lot of them might have these same sculpted bodies where they're all the same sort of shredded buff dude. Yours actually like looked for the most part like as much as you can make an effigy of
I
a guy
worked
into.
very, yeah, it was more like their faces were more like doing a caricature.
Hmm.
At first, I drew them more serious. And during the meetings, they said, we want it more caricature looking.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, now how do I take these guys, still make it look like them on a for a 3D sculpt? And it was very difficult because they
Mm.
were very, 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 very specific.
Yeah.
Um, I had not seen other action figures at the time. I saw a few photographs from magazines of other figures. but nothing three-dimensional. I didn't own any of them or anything. And I was just when I was at that age, by that time, I started working at Marvel when I was like 19 as an assistant. So during from 19 to 24, 25, I was just working. I didn't have money though to
Hmm.
buy things, or I didn't go to the store to collect or anything. I had a child at home and I was married and I was just trying to pay for my bills.
Hmm.
So I just designed straight up what I wanted. They just said there was some other figures that had shorter legs and some other plushies. They said for some reason they had, I guess, Titan wanted the legs to remain shorter,
Hmm.
like other things that they had done. I guess it keeps it more in a cartoony type
Yeah.
realm.
It also
Um,
makes them look bigger as far as like more
yeah.
muscular if
Well,
the upper body is bigger.
I still did them a little larger.
Hmm.
I still did them a little longer than they wanted, but I changed them a lot. But one figure, I actually had a recent figure out with the major wrestling figure podcast official. Not a toy. When when I did them, Macho Man uh, left.
Hmm.
His contract was he took a contract with the WCW
Yeah.
uh, for what was it, NWO or whatever it was.
Yep.
I forget all this because it's been so
That's
long,
so it's fine.
and I've worked on a billion things. So so they didn't produce it,
Right.
and then Matt Cardona had known who I was, and Mike Canick, and those guys, and they finally approached me after I started selling my original designs.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Matt had said, "Hey, let's would you do a card for the whatever the original card you were going to do?
Hmm.
Would you do that? And I want to fulfill the never before produced Macho Man."
Oh, wow.
So, uh, the entire first line that they did was a we'll call it a love letter, but it was based off of my designs
Mm-hmm.
from the original series. The company's default, it was gone for like 15 years. Somebody allegedly says they own it or whatever, but it hasn't produced anything.
Hmm.
So for many years. But one thing people don't know is work I never signed a contract for
Oh,
the company to own what I designed.
right.
Freelance illustrator and the only one they hired.
Hmm.
So those designs were never not mine in many
Hmm.
ways because I never signed a contract that it was theirs.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just
No,
worked for them at the time, and then they were default. So really, I probably have a pretty good claim on the designs.
I would
Anyway,
say so. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I checked it out, and
Yeah.
I have a major claim on that. But um, I haven't said anything to anyone. People copy them. They literally were making molds of them and repainting them and turning them into other things and selling them online. They're all over eBay,
Wow.
sold like that. They're all reproduced. Um, and but it's really great to see that people love them
Hmm.
and that instead of you know they could have copied any line. They copied my
Yeah.
designs.
Yeah.
Um, I
Well, it's
just
nice
find,
you can find the joy in that, or at least a lot of people get kind of bitter about stuff like that. But
well,
it's nice enough. I mean, obviously, money's nice, but it's nice that you can find
well,
that appreciate that the fans love them so much that they're willing to go above and beyond to try to get them back or some semblance of them back.
yeah, yeah, and I'm really happy that Matt loved them and grew up
Mm.
with them. I'm really happy. I really like those guys over there. I like
He's a
Cannon.
super cool guy, and I haven't met him in wrestling personally, but I've met people that have worked with him, and they've said nothing but nice things about him.
I
So
do like to get some props once in a while,
yeah, for
since the
sure.
designs are, swiped.
Yeah.
Uh, I haven't gotten much of that, but and I don't count working for them as props or whatever, doing some,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily props. That's their fulfillment,
Hmm.
not mine.
Hmm.
But at least that's why I mention it to people. But I really like those guys. I really like Matt Cardona. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Uh, he's a collector.
Hmm.
I
Oh,
became
yeah.
a collector too. Canic too, good guy. Um, they're just good people. I love the wrestling community.
Hmm.
Um, I think the wrestling community. I grew up with wrestling.
Hmm.
Um, I was in the Superfly Snooker fan club,
Nice. Excellent.
and we came up with Andre the Giant and Dusty Rhodes and all those guys from the '70s, all the way up through the '80s
Hmm.
into the early '90s. But then I stopped watching wrestling because I had to just focus on family and work.
Yeah, of
When
course.
you're working at Marvel and you're working on toys and all that stuff, you don't, there's deadline, 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 deadline. And I was getting a ton of work.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I missed out on a lot of it after that, but it was fun.
There's quite an overlap between comic fans I find and wrestling fans, at least for in my world. I mean, I have a foot in both, but as a fan of both, like wrestling kind of has some kind of an itch or scratches some kind of an itch that like comics do. You get colorful characters. I often equate them to the two if I talk to someone that's doesn't know much about wrestling. I say it's kind of like a live action comic book. You have your sort of character. He's got his own costume. He's got his own name. He's got his own sort of powers, his move set, and all that sort of stuff. And it's if you can get behind the sort of theatrics of comics, it's pretty easy to get into the theatrics of wrestling. Plus, there's the live entertainment aspect of it. Like when you go to see a show live, it's
Well,
quite an energetic thing for people that come to watch it.
the one thing I have to say, like, and I mentioned Matt a few times, but
Hmm.
it's probably, it's also because I want to promote Matt and
Sure,
everything
yeah. No,
he
great
does,
guy.
and he's a great guy. And
Mm.
but he's also the kind of guy, when I was growing up, which you probably know, people were like, "Oh, wrestling's fake," because
No.
they made the persona. They don't want to, you know, for the younger audience and such, the idea was that it was a guise, that it was real,
Hmm.
but it never was intended to be thought of as real. But
Hmm.
but the thing about that is, just like my favorite wrestler of all time, Roddy Piper,
Oh yeah,
and
awesome.
then Macho Man, yeah, and uh, but um, these guys put their bodies on the line in ways that people just don't understand if they haven't tried it.
Oh yeah.
You have to be extreme, and even if you're heavy,
Hmm.
but you're athletic.
Hmm.
It's crazy because you got to think these guys. Some of these guys are 230 pounds. They're smaller now than they were before.
Yes.
After the whole, steroid thing in the '90s or 2000s or whatever it was.
Hmm.
Uh, but who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Uh, these guys are great athletes, and I see Matt doing these things with throwing thumbtacks all over the ground and
Yeah.
making fun
Yeah. He went
basically,
hard into the deathmatch stuff after he left WWE.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically putting him on fire almost,
Yeah.
torn muscles in his pecs and everything. I'm thinking to myself, if this were in wrestling in the Olympics, they don't walk away completely injured for
No.
months. I'm sure it happens,
Hmm.
but these pro wrestler entertainers are tough, 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 tough individuals.
Oh yeah.
My hat's off to those guys. Uh, and it is an amazing, and to say that some people say it's not a sport. It is a sport. If you're
Oh yeah.
doing that, if physically doing that, yeah, I'm tired in 2 seconds. And I did martial arts all my life. I was a boxer for 15 years.
Yeah.
It's still what they do. I just hats off to
Oh.
those. That's why I love wrestling. That's why I love professional wrestling. That's why I love when people make action figures of them and get involved in the characterization and storylines. They have storylines,
Oh yeah.
and it's awesome. And some of these guys, I remember seeing that Macho Man had a he was having a match with, I don't know who it was, but everything was fully scripted.
Hmm.
But every move.
Hmm.
And they would say something in the, throw him into the turnbuckle and say something in his ear. And
Yep.
that I'm sure that's a prompt for what they're going to be
Yep.
doing next, just to keep it in order.
Hmm.
Uh, but let's take just that alone.
Hmm.
You have to keep that entire match in mind of what's going to happen, what the next move is, choreography, in tune with them.
Hmm.
Sometimes on just a whim.
Yep. Oh yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's like having a one take for acting. It's
Well,
like play.
I've been doing it for 18 years now, and I can tell you, yeah, it's the hardest part is often coming up with matches and just and also memorizing the match, and like you don't always need to remember every part of it. Usually it's like aspects, the beginning, maybe the end, maybe something cool in the middle, and then you kind of free flow a little bit in the outskirts. But yeah, that's the hardest part. I mean, the injuries too. Like my shoulder is really messed up right now from a show I did a couple weeks ago, and I got one this Saturday. And it's just sort of like, it wears on your body after a while. You're just sort of like, like you can see how guys back in the day, before we had what we have now when it comes to like massage and other things to help or physio, just did pills or whatever until it killed them, essentially. They just keep working through the pain until they either died or they got addicted to it and then died later. Like it was one or the other.
And I got to hand it to to these guys. They I don't know about you because we don't know each other yet, but I'm
Hmm.
assuming it might be the same. They travel all over the place all
Hmm.
the time.
Hmm.
And it's not unless you're in the WWE or one of the larger wrestling bodies, you can still make a good living. But most of the guys, if you talk about all of the industry
Hmm.
around the world, most guys just make an average living or even a harder one than that. And by
Yep.
the time they have to take care of medical stuff and travel and all that stuff, it's not like, oh, you're making all kinds of money,
Yeah.
and still you're putting your bodies on the
Yeah,
line.
there's a
And
real passion you need to have to do it. You can't just if you're
right,
just doing it for money, like it's rare like you to get to a level where those guys are at, like it's so rare to get there from nowhere. And also like it's also not most people in the world, there are some people up there at different levels depending what promotion you're wrestling for, but most times, it's not steady income. It's like you might have three or four shows in a week or a month or whatever, just depending. Like, I probably in the busiest months have maybe somewhere between 6, 10 matches a month, and that's
wow.
not super common, but it's like you can't rely on it. It's got to be like, I make money, you sell merch that helps with your face on it, your shirts, your stuff. Um, but all said and done, you have to have a passion for it because if you're doing it simply for the money, there's many other things you could be doing to make more
Oh,
money than that.
well,
So
it's like that in any type of creative
yeah.
world.
Yeah, and it's true with comic people too. Like almost it's amazing how much it overlaps. Like comedians, anybody that kind of performs or does
Well,
anything like that sort of thing.
yeah, it's its own form of entertainment.
Yeah.
By the way, here's the Macho Man.
Oh yeah.
Here's the card.
Oh wow, that looks amazing.
And had me finish the card. And that's not the colors of his suit necessarily at the time, but
Yeah.
he said, "Well, what were you going to do?" I said, "I wanted to design new colors and new a little bit something my own
Hmm.
back then because I had the opportunity to." So he said, "Go ahead and just do whatever you would
That
do."
is awesome.
So it's
Wow.
signed by me and everything, and then
Yeah.
this was the preview.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I
That is
think he did a
beautiful.
really great job on that.
Yeah, that looks awesome. The colors are gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I
I
like the
love the
little,
not a toy in the bottom. That's great.
yeah, yeah. It has
Ages
the
18
back
and
has a
up.
picture of uh, um, it's got Brian Myers on here and Mark Sterling and Matt Cardona and this little picture here.
Oh
I
yeah.
like how they put their faces on it
Yeah.
because these are not geeks doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah, yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah. No, they're definitely industry experts.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess we should get up to how you got to Marvel and all that. So,
Uh,
I assume you mentioned you were a single parent household. Your dad was not in the picture.
my dad left when I was one,
Ah,
and my mom had six children,
hmm.
and so we lived in housing
Yep.
stuff in a tenement, and really rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
Uh,
But then you kind of fell into comics because you're an uncle.
but
So were you
comics,
starting to draw
we
then
found
too?
them. We found comics at this. We always saw them. We didn't get them. We started getting them,
Hmm.
buying them, and I fell in love with the superheroes.
Nice.
My brother and I were, and I don't want to say like everybody else, oh, we were always drawing out of pencil,
Hmm.
but because every kid does at
Hmm.
that age. There's anyone who says, I was a kid drawing, since every single kid was
Yeah.
drawing.
Oh yeah.
Every human on the planet of Earth who was a child at one time had crayons or a pencil, so everyone was.
Hmm.
But it's different when you excel to a level, a place at your age, whatever age you are,
Hmm.
higher than the other kids.
Yes.
Like where it's definitely like, oh my gosh, this kid of a woman has this talent that even at a young age they knew. We were like, oh my gosh, these kids can really draw. This isn't just kids drawing with crayons. They're doing great stuff with it.
Hmm.
So I was interested, and so was my brother, in drawing and art. And when we saw comics, we didn't have to know about anatomy and everything at 7 years old and 8 years old and 9 years old to know that what we were seeing was what we wanted to achieve
Hmm.
because we tried to draw it. We just couldn't get to that level,
Hmm.
you know, because we were 7 and 8 and
Yeah.
9.
Yeah.
But we were drawing from those comics as we saw them, one here or there that came about in the household, and not that we bought, or my grandfather gave us some comics when he was selling stuff at a flea market. And so, but when we started collecting them, we got serious about drawing them. And by the time we were like 12, we were trying to get independent work in comics.
Oh wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually almost had a thing, but uh, uh, my my father wasn't there. I had no father there. My mother didn't know what to do with all this.
Hmm.
My aunt was, leery about anyone, so we didn't get a chance to work on it. We actually could have gotten a job working on an independent comic when we were 12.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Well, how would you even meet how would you even meet
at
somebody
a
at that
comic
age?
shop,
Okay.
there was an art contest at a comic shop. So we put our art in the show
Wow.
at the comic store,
That's cool.
and people were like looking at our artwork like, oh my gosh. And they didn't know, our age, and then found out who was that, who drew that. And it was cool, that people were like, some guy was like, hey, I want to do an independent comic. And my aunt was with us, and he started talking to her, but they weren't going to let us do shit like that, you
No.
know. So fast forward, my brother meets a truck driver who he did a sketch for the guy of a portrait. The guy, my brother, they were talking about art, and the guy said, hey, I know some guy who was working on Elf Quest or something like that,
Yeah,
or
Richard
whatever.
Richard Pini or Wendy and Richard Pini or the
I don't,
creators of it.
I
Yeah.
didn't, I didn't read it.
Uh
You know, uh, so it turned out to be this guy, Mark, who lived in the city, who was just about ready to start working at Marvel. And so we were 18 still, 18 and a half, something like that. And my brother got this contact. So he was going up there, met with Mark, and then said, I want to bring my brother in, which my brother always had done. He had always supported me, my twin brother.
oh, nice.
And he's a phenomenal artist himself. He just worked as a character designer on the Watchmen animated.
Oh, the new one. Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if I've gotten the chance to see it or anything.
The new one that just came out, like the literal adaptation of the
Did it come
comic.
out? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Part one is out now. Yes.
okay. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, he
Yeah.
worked on it. He's very
Wow. That's fantastic.
but he's worked for Marvel Entertainment. You've seen his artwork all over on toys and on posters and stuff like that because I inked it. Uh,
Nice.
but anyway, so he got this connection, And then I was over there, but he was going off to college and do other things and had like this other job as a graphic designer or something.
That's
Uh,
that's what I do in the day to day. So
oh,
I'm,
okay.
it's very, very transferable skills when it comes to comic stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
I do some of it still today.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, no,
I
100%.
have to though, because relying on some graphic designers doesn't, I just do it myself.
Yeah.
Uh, Pick
Yeah.
up, go on. I do it in Photoshop though,
Hmm.
but a lot of the graphic designers say, "Oh, you got to do it in InDesign or whatever it is."
I hate InDesign. So,
But
yeah.
I do it in Photoshop, and I have no problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, uh, so I'm a passionate guy.
Hmm.
When I'm going to do something, I can't not do it. If I say I'm going to do it, the only time I can't not do it is when I decide there's something else more important to do. If not, if I have a goal, I'll do it.
Hmm.
Just how it is. It'll happen. I said someday I'm going to be at the Shaolin Temple in China, the oldest monastery and everything. I didn't know my name was going to be on a monument there, but it was, and it is. And
Wow.
I was there, and uh, I traveled around. I've been around the world and trained and sparred and did all this stuff everywhere. And it was everything I wanted to do. And I just, you know, it eventually happened. But, when you're young, you think you're going to do it when you're in your 20s.
Hmm.
I did it when I was in my 40s.
Hmm.
So it's,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it happened.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be a comic book artist. I wasn't going to not be a comic book artist. My brother knew that. He was going off to do other things, and then he would come back to it. But I stayed and became an assistant for Mark Basella. And it turns out he was working on Alpha Flight and other things that were pretty popular. And then he started working on as Rob Liefeld had was leaving, and Jim Lee and Silvestri to make Image to form Image. They transferred it over to someone else, the book, and they, as Rob was still, I think he was in California already, but still connected to the books because he was plotting them, working with Fabian and everyone, uh, and Bob Harris, I believe, and all that. Is it? Anyway, I started assisting on all that stuff. So like the first was it X-Force 11 and stuff. Maybe I did one before that or two. I don't know, but I
Hmm.
think it was X-Force 11. I was started assisting, and I was assisting on like the first time Deadpool and Domino fought each other and blah blah blah. But my hands were on those stories, and I remember I there's a page where I drew Banshee, I believe it was on the screen, and I got to draw him in it. But nobody knew that stuff,
Hmm.
which was funny because I had to start telling people because I Mark didn't give me any credit as an assistant.
Hmm.
Like assistant, he could have just said, assistant or whatever, Guy Dorian Sr. But he didn't. But that's okay. I guess it wasn't his thought process at the time.
Yeah,
Uh,
it feels like that's a weird old boys club thing where like it's you have to earn your dues, kind of in a way that I feel like it's sort of fallen by the wayside
yeah,
in
I
modern
believe. See,
time.
I believe you're earning your dues when you're doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. But
Um, but anyway, so I did that for a while, and I did sell stuff to Marvel,
mhm.
like a 4 or 5 page Daredevil story, and I sold a Fantastic Four double page splash that Al Milgrom inked.
Oh wow.
I
Cool.
did a Daredevil pinup that Dan Panosian inked. Um, and I did that Daredevil story, a Nova pinup, and that was all before my stuff was published.
Mm,
So I was assisting at 19. I worked for 2.5 years as an assistant and got paid for works at Marvel that never got published.
mhm,
And then I got published.
mhm,
Uh, and then not long after that, whatever it was, 2 years or whatever, I don't know how many years, uh, I was at the offices, hanging out, and I think I was bringing in Marvel Comics Presents work, and John was in his office. John Romita Sr. was in his office, and I tapped on the door jamb, and I said, "Hey, John." He said, "Hey, guy, what's up?" I said, "Hey, there's a door, not two doors down or whatever it was from him, that was closed, and it said Toy Biz." I said, that's a toy company, right? I didn't know you guys. Do you guys own that? He said, yeah, that's Marvel's. Toy Biz is Marvel's. I said, can you introduce me to those guys? I really would like to get to know those guys. I always wanted to do toys. So he goes, sure, I'll introduce you. Um, so with John Romita Sr.'s hand on my shoulder and a knock on the door, they opened the door and John said, "Hey, this is Guy Dorian Sr. He's a really talented young artist here at Marvel. Why don't you take a look at his work? Maybe you guys might like some of it." Um, they looked at it and instantly hired me.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, they're like, "Oh, this is great." So they hired me to do asset art that was going to go for possibly boxes. It would go for any product they were making. It would go to the animators who were working on the Silver Surfer cartoon.
Oh, cool.
It was just Marvel asset art that would be traveled around to whatever they wanted to source it for.
Hmm.
Um, so that was my first gig in toys.
Wow.
And because they were a toy company, even though
Yeah.
it was asset art. So then there's a whole story. I fibbed to get my work at Just Toys. I knew they were right there by Marvel. How I found out toy companies that I wanted to contact after that, because I enjoyed it very much. They paid way more,
Mhm.
and I was smart at the time because right now, Marvel Comics, it's really, I'm trying not to say anything bad about the industry, but
Mhm.
they don't pay any more now than they did 30 years ago. And if you
Mhm.
tell me inflation hasn't changed, food prices haven't changed, the cost of living, the cost of uh, uh, insurance, health insurance, um, they don't pay any more than they did back then.
Mhm.
So I did the right thing at the time. I went to toy companies that paid three times my page rate
Wow.
for just doing a couple of sketches of one character.
Mm. Yeah.
It's an absolute crying shame that the industry pays the same now for most creators. Not me, but I've been in the industry for 30 something years.
Yeah.
Uh, but mostly not any different than 30 years ago. No
Yeah.
healthcare, no anything. No, oh, I'm sick, oh, sick pay, oh, this, that, or vacation or anything. No option for any of it, nothing. Unless you're contracted by Marvel as a long-term writer. It's usually the writers that are wearing their golden sneakers, as one writer told me, uh, at Marvel, where they've been there a long time, they have contracts. Some of them have contracts not to write.
Really?
Yeah, so that the other companies don't get them.
Wow.
I won't say who or
Oh, that's
stuff.
fair. But no, yeah, and you can kind of tell if you read enough comics, you know the guys that are wearing those sneakers, as you
Yeah.
say, because
But
you can tell how often they work and how high their
yeah,
stuff is promoted.
so as far as the rates are concerned, it's abysmal, and I think it's embarrassing to the industry. At the same time, it's hard to say I don't love Marvel. I
Hmm.
don't love the characters. Um,
But the
I
big
don't.
companies prey on that too, and I don't want to shit on them either because I love Marvel too. But like they prey on your passion and like that's what brought you to the table, right? Like you wanted to be a writer because you or an artist because you grew up
If
reading
you look
Marvel.
at, but if you look at it from the company standpoint, I try to keep that in mind.
Yeah, fair
I
enough.
don't own the company,
Yes.
and I try to keep in mind that if it weren't for the company, would these characters still be out there? Would they have hired anyone anyway for any reason?
Mm,
Would we all get what we want as far as we might not always get what we want that they do as people who grew up in the past and
Hmm.
Generation Xers, because there's new generations and new things made, but we can always still go back and look at the stuff they did.
Yeah.
The Deadpool Wolverine movie was badass. Uh,
Yeah.
that's through Marvel, Marvel
Yep.
Entertainment. The figures that we collect is through Marvel. So, I give Marvel props for that. I just think that, you know, as a company though,
Mm.
they have to think about themselves and their profits, their losses. So I don't blame them for being able to hire. They don't hire artists really mostly. Most are not ever contracted.
Yeah, they're
And
freelance.
right. So they look at as the same as, hey, if you had a guy who cuts your lawn, which, is obviously different, but if you had a guy who cuts your lawn and there were three guys vying for the job to cut your lawn, and one guy's going to cut it for half that price because he's from another country and that same money it feeds his family five times the amount of
Mhm.
what your dollar would be, but he'll do it for that rate. Or just in general, someone who will do it that for that rate who's
Mhm.
has lives in his home still and
Yep.
why would you say, yeah, I'll take that guy who will do the same job or near the same job, maybe it's not usually the case but sometimes,
Hmm.
uh and I could do it for that money.
Yeah.
Well, can't blame companies for taking that offer or making that offer, I should say,
Yeah, I had a
uh,
discussion with someone the other day. I said that it's usually the same people that will complain about or will defend like, capitalism as the best option, or also the ones that'll complain about like too many foreign workers. And it's kind of the same thing. Like that's why big companies will use them because they can pay less. Like they're like they get subsidiaries. Like to complain about the two things, it's all part of a much bigger issue.
well, the thing is, I don't blame them as a company for doing what they do.
Yeah, exactly. They're
I
playing
just,
within the system.
right. I just wish it were different,
Yes.
that they, as a, I think they were, owned by Disney, were, like a $400 billion company or something. I might even be wrong, it might be more. Now, I think over the last few years, it's dropped a lot, but they're
Mhm.
still worth hundreds of billions of dollars. You would think that maybe for the comic artists
Yeah.
they're hiring, they could raise the cost, the prices they pay to creators, um to match something different than 30 years ago,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
we all know. Also, I think it would be very a different landscape if there was a rule where if you live in another country and the American dollar is worth 98 times more
Yeah.
your country, that whoever you're paying, it was an equal value to each person, no matter where they lived in their country, based on the value of the dollar.
Hmm.
And the reason why is, if you live in India, the cost of an apartment is 98% cheaper than it is in the United States.
Hmm.
Yet they'll people in India, which I'm very happy when any artist has a job. Don't get me
Hmm.
wrong. I'm talking about the industry.
Yeah.
If they make $100 a page or 50 American dollars a page, it's not the same thing as
Hmm.
over here.
Yeah.
And I've met people and talked to people who work from other countries, where the American dollar is worth two, four, six, eight times the amount here. And when they convert it, we wonder where they went. Where did these people go? They were working, they were doing great work for 2 3 years and they're gone. And then I talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, man, I can live for 10 years off of that.
Hmm.
I'm living like a king for
Hmm.
10 years off of that. So at the same time, Marvel needs to do what's best for them. The artists there need to do what's best for them. but I wish there was a that the big companies would make a level playing field so that the artists here aren't going, oh my gosh, the amount I got paid for 2 pages could barely buy my weekly groceries.
Hmm.
I can't afford health care. I can't afford this, that, or that. Yet there's other people doing the same work who are living lavish lifestyles of making a third or the same money.
Yeah.
And I just wish it was a level playing field because it really isn't.
No.
Anyone who says it's just a lie
Hmm.
because it's not. But you know what? I'm also happy for them because that's just what it is. But uh, um, I try to pay everyone the most I can, no matter what company I work for,
Mm.
because I usually build things, create things, make the money, try to find the salaries that the artists want, and no artist ever tells me, well, I made $50 last month at this company, but I prefer to make the most I've ever made at every company.
Hmm.
That is usually the case.
Mm.
And even though I'm not a large company, I try to find the highest amount I can for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, and you also understand the struggle, and as an artist yourself,
Yeah, but when I make those, I usually take half my rate.
yeah. No, good on you.
I do that all the time to help support the people in the industry working there. I have people I work with right now who live in other countries, and since they're getting a higher rate, a rate that others get here, and you say, well, why wouldn't they make the same as people here?
Hmm.
It's not the point. That's why I say, yeah, so I'm paying them the same. So I'm not counteracting it. What I'm saying is that when larger companies have that kind of money, it should be a level playing field.
Yes. Yeah, because they have the means to do it.
Right.
Yeah,
But,
and
but yeah, yeah, they have the means to do it.
for sure. Do you so when you moved to toys, is that after you'd done your work in comics, then you're kind of gone to toys, or did you go back to comics, or you have a foot in both, or because I know you worked on quite a few things in the 90s here. I was just looking through some of your stuff.
Well,
Um,
I worked in comics and toy, but when I left comics, I still did independent stuff. I
hmm,
still did um, work on all kinds of independent stuff, but I was still working in toys in
okay,
some
cool.
way or another. And
So
I
your
worked,
work on like the New Warriors and all that would have been before you moved to toys.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was
Okay,
all.
cool.
And
Uh,
then once I moved to toys, though, then I was working for 20th Century Fox. I was working for um, uh, Marvel Entertainment. I was working for Gordy. I was working for Just Toys. And then I said Toy Biz. I did work in those and other companies for years. And then I decided, and I did advertising art and stuff
mhm.
like that. And then I decided I wanted to go back to comics because there were things I wanted to fulfill. And a buddy of mine and my brother had started working with a buddy of ours, Matthew Pilata, who had a few different companies where he wanted to do animation and he wanted to do all kinds of stuff in the entertainment field,
Mhm.
meaning arts and
Mhm.
entertainment. Eventually, he wanted to start doing comics, and he had the means so he after hiring my brother to start working on a comic series, my brother said, "Hey, why don't you check out my brother's work too?" As he was checking out different people's work, and Matt and I knew each other for years, but that doesn't mean I'm asking him to hire me for a job. He opens a company, but it did make sense, and so then I started working with him and creating things like a book called Core Controlled Organic Robotics, as well as other books that are soon to come out, actually,
Mm.
because there was COVID and my wife was ill for many years, and there was COVID, and then there was all kinds of things going on. And when he's trying to put these books out, well, we couldn't go to conventions and sell them.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult as a new publisher to work with big time creators when Marvel calls their
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get people to do, even if you're paying the rates. So what Matt did was something that almost no company ever did, because he understood the plight of the artist was and creator was he paid them their Marvel rates,
Wow.
which is the highest rates you're getting.
Hmm.
And he paid them the rates just so like that were even some of their better rates, even some of them weren't even getting anymore.
Hmm.
He was a real champion and always has been.
Wow.
Um, so my brother created a series with him, and then there was another one, and um, um, then I created one called Core, Controlled Organic Robotics, and uh, uh, he had let us build up creators that were huge. My brother worked with Bill Sienkiewicz and
Oh,
Mark
wow.
Texeira and Joe Weems, among others. Um, um, uh, I was working with Herb Trimpe, Larry Hama, um, Neil Adams, even Michael Golden. I worked with Mike Royer, Joe Sinnott, um, and my longtime first it was Bob Wyacek I was working with as my anchor, and then it turned into Bob was having some problems with his eyes, which he can no longer ink. And so I wound up uh, through him uh, starting to work with a guy named Sal Buscema, who was famous for the Hulk and ROM and all that.
Big
And
fan.
yeah, oh, okay.
I'm a big
Uh,
fan, yeah.
well, he's been my anchor ever since. He's still,
Really?
yeah, oh yeah.
Wow. I'm
Yeah,
a huge fan of his work.
Sal Buscema worked on a graphic novel with me called Core that Larry Hama, like it's controlled organic robotics. But then Sal came with me over to work with, I started working with Louise Simonson,
Hmm.
uh, with John Carpenter and Sandy Carpenter at um, uh, Storm King. And Louise and I worked on a short story, and Sal was my anchor there too.
That was that
Uh,
Halloween book that he had put out or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He has a bunch of it's Sandy's company actually,
Right.
but they're all John Carpenter Presents, and they have a whole line of books.
Yes.
But
I'm a big John Carpenter fan too. So, as you know,
oh, okay, all
yeah,
right, there
no,
you
yeah,
go.
yeah. So,
So
I've actually, many people you named are all people that I hold in high regard. Herb Trimpe, I met him at a con in Montreal many years ago, and there's his last issue of the Hulk, the last one he drew is that one signed by him up there, which I was pretty happy to
nice,
get. And
nice.
yeah, he was such a cool dude, and I met Neil Adams there as well. He was very, very interesting to have a chat with, and it was just such a yeah. Like Sal Buscema though was growing up because like that's why when Davin had suggested you for the show, I was looking through your work. I realized that I'd been a fan because I was a huge New Warriors fan growing up.
Okay,
And like in like trash because I was a 90s kid. I was born in 85. So like when I was growing up, that's where all those cool
they were, yeah,
they were like the cool, different new superhero group
yes,
that seemed
yes.
very much of the time, and but Buscema was also up there for me because I was a huge Spider-Man fan, always have been.
Oh
And
yeah, he was doing it.
his work on Web, I think it was
Web
or
of no,
Spectacular.
Spectacular
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
He has
Uh,
one of the best punchers in the one of the best to draw a punch in I think
well,
in comics.
him and Kirby,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and it would be pow, and you would see he would just make the person just
Oh, they're flying at the screen, like at the
yeah,
camera.
yeah,
Like every time Spider-Man or the Hulk or someone just laid someone out, it was always like them upside down, flying at the
yeah,
camera. Like it was
yeah.
just so
But
dynamic. He's such a cool
but
artist.
all those guys were actually friends of mine, and I wanted
That's
my
awesome.
friends to work with me.
Yeah, that's huge.
Um, if you told me when I was 12 that these guys would not only be friends of mine, but I'd be collaborating with them, I would have said, "You got to be out of your mind." But again, if I have a goal,
Yeah.
I take dreams and I make them goals, um, and then that's how I know where to go.
Hmm.
Um, and then I have 2, 5, and 10 year goals. So, um, but you know, I praise Matthew Pilata for letting that happen, and he still has stuff he'll be putting out. He acquired the company himself. He wasn't the co only owner; he was a co-owner.
Hmm.
So it took like 2 years for him to acquire it
Hmm.
after COVID for 2 years. So, he's got other stuff and books already ready to go. Um,
Nice.
uh, then I worked with John and Sandy, and then Bill Sienkiewicz inked me on a story over there.
Wow.
Uh, then Wheezy and I, Louise Simonson, a good friend of mine, we did a thing. It was 5 issue, uh, a mini series that was turned into a trade paperback, um, uh, called Hyperbreed, which you could look up and you'll see it's one word. And through John Carpenter Presents Storm Kids, they decided to make an entirely new line called Storm Kids, because our stuff, although science fiction horror, was not dark horror.
Mm.
Um, so we were like the debut of that, and it's still going strong, Storm Kids. Um, but that came out right in the middle of COVID too. It's kind of like, but Kelly Jones did a cover for it.
Oh,
Andrew P
wow.
did
That's
a
cool.
cover for it. Howard Chaykin did a cover for it.
Wow.
Walter Simonson did a cover for it. Sal and I did a cover for it. So, I mean, it was like blessed with like this great royalty of artwork and covers. And Scott Hanna inked an issue. Scott Hanna inked me on some of Core as well. Scott's a good pal of mine, and we
Oh, wow.
worked together. I'd say in about three or so issues of things, not counting character designs,
Mhm.
plenty of character designs and all that stuff. So he usually works with me on something I do all the time. So then I was doing work with IDW. And then, wouldn't you know, my buddy Chris Ryall hires me and Sal Buscema to work together as a team doing backstories for ROM. One of my favorite characters of all time I've always wanted to work on was ROM Space Knight.
You'll be amazed how many people, like, I mean, you wouldn't be, but many people like that I talk to through the show, or just people I know in the comic industry or anything. ROM and like Micronauts, and those are like the epitome for what people want to work on a lot. And it's surprising, to people that don't know anything about comics, that it's those characters, but they're just in that sweet spot, man. The toys, everything about growing up with those. That's
Well,
awesome.
well, I think ROM was Parker Brothers, was it? And then it was Mattel, uh, and Mattel owns it. Um, um, uh, um, they wanted to use ROM in Guardians of the Galaxy, from what I heard.
Yeah, they want to use the Micronauts too. I think they want to use Bug,
Yeah, it was
but
James
they,
Gunn, because James Gunn's a huge comic fan,
oh yeah,
huge nerd, comic nerd, but he's the coolest guy on the face of the earth as well at the same time. Um,
I'm very excited for his DC. I think I'm finally going to get the DC movies I want, which are like
I
fun adventure movies.
I think the thing about him is he is like an ultimate fan in the good way, where
Yeah,
he
yeah.
where he just wants to see what can he do that's faithful and yet still new, and 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 he loves the he you could tell he loves what he does.
Oh
He
yes.
loves the characters, he loves the stories, he loves the people he works with. He has a great love for the industry. um
There's so much heart in his work. Like
yeah
it's not even just it's so much an homage to the stuff, but there's such a heart. Like you can tell he truly, truly cares about it. And not just about making it goofy, about really like showing why it's great. Like
yeah
why you should love this, why the themes still are relevant. Like his version of the Suicide Squad is one of my favorite superhero movies ever made. It's definitely my top five. And
I
like,
would
it's a ridiculous movie if you think about it, but it's got so much heart. It's so well done. It's so funny. And and his Guardians movies are fantastic too. And I like the third one is high in my books as well. Um,
yeah
They're just like so much heart. So like if you told me I'd be like literally in tears watching a movie about CGI
I know.
animals, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like every time I saw Rocket's
don't give
friends,
anything
I would
away.
just cry
Don't
because
give
like
anything away. Don't give
yeah,
anything.
yeah, I won't, I
But
won't. But
I
you would
was a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I
mhm.
was talking with Michael Rooker about it for,
Nice.
and we were talking about different things, and
Big fan of him too.
he's a really good guy.
Yeah.
So, but it was interesting because we were talking. Well, I won't go on, but we were talking, and it's cool because James Gunn is just such a lover of ROM, and
Yeah.
so. Um, anyway, back to ROM. Sal and
Hmm.
I worked on ROM at IDW, and uh, I was very surprised at how much love I got. I was not the main artist.
Hmm.
All the praise to the main artist. I thought they did a great job.
Hmm.
Chris Ryall did a phenomenal job. There's no one who loves ROM more than Chris Ryall,
Hmm.
um, uh, who I always try to have him work with me on whatever I can work on. Um, but what I didn't expect was that so many fans would love the work that I did and then pretty much tell me I'm the this era's ROM guy.
No, that's awesome.
It doesn't hurt that my teacher was Sal Buscema, the
Hmm.
ROM artist of the any generation. Sal's the greatest ROM artist of all time,
Hmm.
hands down. I'm lucky that I'm now mentioned in that, of one of the better ROM artists of all time. But again, I had Sal Buscema inking me, and Sal says, well, I just inked your lines, guy. But Sal has a flair as an
Hmm.
inker that's undeniably fantastic.
Hmm.
And Sal and I, like Michael Golden said, man, when you and Sal got together, it was magic, dude. He's like, this is really good stuff. You guys really work well together. And I think it's just because I was such a huge fan of Sal's. I don't draw like Sal, though.
No.
I don't draw anything like Sal. There's other artists out there who draw like Sal who are fans of Sal. I don't do that. I just draw the way I draw. But we just happen to match because I'm in that school of thought.
Hmm.
The Simonson, the Trimpey, the Sal Buscemas, those guys. Um, the John Burns, because I'm a huge John Byrne fan, always.
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
Um, but that transferred, and people love my ROM like crazy. The last time I heard somebody tell me they loved my ROM was a couple days ago.
That is
It's
awesome.
an amazing thing. So if you haven't seen those, I did exclusive covers. I did a ROM Micronauts cover that people went nuts over. The
Yeah.
first time ROM was ever actually published on a cover with two guns.
Hmm.
So that was fun. To look up the ROM Micronauts cover.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right
Dorian
now
Sr.
with
Yeah,
Carlo in the back. That's
mine
awesome.
mine wasn't the main cover though. And people were like, why wasn't yours the main cover? Again, kudos to everyone who
Yeah.
got their cover, but I wasn't the main artist. I
Hmm.
was a backstory artist. So was Sal, we were, but, man, it was so good to hear people do reviews of it and go, and then I saw Guy's cover and went nuts. It's like, wow, really? But I busted my rump to make sure I refused to not draw the toaster head. That was one of the things. When they had created a new ROM suit, I just couldn't get myself to not draw the. I thought I was going to get fired because I wouldn't draw the curvilinear formed helmet.
Yeah.
And I really thought, they would send it back to me and say, "Hey, can you adjust this? He's a little different now, and this is a little different, and that's a little different." And to be honest, I barely made changes on it and sent it back. I wasn't trying to be nefarious. I just felt like
Yeah, he wasn't your wrong.
to be honest, I wouldn't have blamed them if they fired me for doing that, but they didn't. But I just felt like I couldn't get myself to not draw the damn toaster head. I just couldn't.
He's so
And
clearly
so,
defined to you, and
right.
that
So when
yeah.
people got to the back of the book, and I was the one who was breaking the law, breaking the rules of ROM, that new series, in many ways by doing those things. Um, the fans loved it though
Yeah.
because wanted the toaster head, there was nothing wrong with the new design. I thought it
Hmm.
was great,
Yeah.
but for me, toaster head could not be not done. If I ever get a chance to draw the X-Men, I in the commissions and stuff, I draw their original costumes. And I'm not talking about Jim Lee changed costumes era. I'm talking yellow, blue, or anything like that, which was fine.
Hmm.
I'm talking about Wolverine and his, fighting Wendigo in whatever issue that was, 130, whatever,
Hmm.
seven, I don't know.
With the
Uh,
little lines over the yeah.
any of it. I draw the usually the Byrne era, Cockrum
Mhm.
era X-Men,
Yeah.
which was the most, beloved, I would say. But I can't say that now, though.
Well,
There's,
I think you
there's,
probably
there.
still could.
Well, there was the '90s Jim Lee that where they changed the costume to the yellow and blue, and I thought some of those designs were pretty interesting and worked for the time.
Mm.
And I think maybe the generation that came up with that might say those are the main designs that they loved. So
Yeah, there's certain
I don't want to
elements.
discount that. I don't want to discount that,
Well,
you
you
know.
look at what they did in the movie. I mean, they went with the blue and yellow when they gave Wolverine his costume, and of sorts. So I
Right.
guess
So
it
you got
generationally depends. But even the X-Men '97 cartoon, like not to give, I'm not thinking of giving any spoilers away. They do return to some of those old costumes within it, which is
yeah,
very
but
cool.
the Wolverine blue and yellow, I don't think was really based on Jim Lee at all. I think it was based on
Just them
Wolverine.
changing the color pattern of the
Well, it was
random.
based on Jim Lee's by the original design that was John Romita Jr.'s,
Hmm.
and the first person to draw it in the stories was Herbie.
Yep.
I think it was based on that, and then the era of um, Wolverine in the Cockrum Byrne era,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then just updated with uh, 2020s movie designers who,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and there was another design of the costume in one of the Wolverine books that was closer to that movie design as well. But I just don't remember which one it was.
Yeah, I do. It was from, it's funny because a lot of the stuff in the big movies, it seems like it's from the past like 20, 30 years. Like all the storylines are doing, all the costumes kind of are reminiscent of what's only come in the past couple decades.
Yeah.
It was the covers. I can't remember. He's like a painted artist guy, and he has these hyper realistic covers.
You mean
He
Alex Ross?
No, it was Bianchi, maybe is that his name?
Oh,
Something.
Simon Bianchi.
Yeah, that might be the one I'm thinking of. There was someone who did a lot of covers and he had a lot of extra lines and a lot of like that stuff in the design, which I think is probably something to do with that. I think that's who it was, but I'm not
I
100%
thought
sure.
the movie, the Deadpool Wolverine movie, um, first of all, it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun. It was very fun.
It
Yeah.
was just fun from the beginning to the end. It
Yeah.
was just fun. If you go in there, it was total fan service.
Yeah, which is fine.
Absolute,
It
which
was,
which
yeah.
and you know what? It is the biggest box office, I think, R-rated film of all time,
Yeah, I think so now, yeah.
and of Marvels or any superhero film. So listen, we're not going to put him in his yellow suit. He's going to be in all leather, black, and he's going to do this, and then we're going to do that. Man, that fan service, the Gen Pub, I call it the Gen Pub.
Hmm.
It's a term I made up. That's general public.
Yeah.
I call it Gen Pub. And the Gen Pub is I, 30 years ago, the general public, we were nerds.
Yeah.
No matter if we did martial arts or not or anything, we are still nerds because we like this stuff.
Hmm.
And now it doesn't matter who you are. You can easily say, I love Wolverine. I love the X-Men. And you could be a football player.
Yep.
Like Tyson collects action figures,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
and you're not going to tell him there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Uh, he's a nerd. I dare you. Uh,
Yeah.
and I know martial artists from all over the world, and they're in movies and stuff, and they send me messages. I love your stuff. Guys from the Shaolin Temple tell me they love superheroes and my stuff and things like that. So it's not we're all nerds. It's like
Yeah.
the nerds have inherited the earth.
Yeah.
They say the meek shall inherit the earth. I'm sorry, it's the geek shall inherit. So
Very nice.
and we have
Yeah, totally. Well, even
and
just I think it's a great testament to like you can honor the comics, you can do the stuff you want to do and still make it digestible to the audience. Like my wife's not a comic nerd, like she came watch that movie with me, she laughed the whole time and had a blast. She didn't get every single reference. She hasn't seen every
it
Marvel
doesn't
thing.
matter.
That's what I mean. She enjoyed it. It was
That's
fun.
what I'm
Like that's
saying. If you
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with what the comics are
Nope.
and what they were, and it being doing that kind of action. I'd like to say action, not violence, even though
Mhm.
there is violence, a lot of violence. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, my wife and I have watched horror movies since 1988.
Hmm. Good year for horror movies.
Since then, and I watched some type of horror almost every single day, and we've watched thousands of movies in horror. And the Wolverine Deadpool movie has more blood in it
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, yeah.
than almost any horror movie I've
Yeah.
ever seen. And we're talking Evil Dead
Yeah.
series where there's just pools and floods of blood.
Yeah.
Uh, but the way that they do it, with the humor that they use, and
Hmm.
the I thought the fight choreography was done very well. It was really well done. Um, you go back to early 2000s films and you look at the fight choreography in Marvel films, and you're kind of like, no, they're not, because I'm used to seeing martial artists from around the globe, especially in China, who you look at it and you go, that is not the same type of that level of fight choreography is better than anything you're going to see in America at
Hmm.
any time, no matter what. Until I saw the Sherlock Holmes films and stuff like that, where uh, uh, you see really great fight choreography. Um, uh, and then Daredevil, the TV series, I only
Yeah.
watched part of it, but when I saw the fight choreography on there, I'm like, they're watching Asian martial arts film.
Oh yeah.
Now they're starting to do it a little, they're starting to do it right.
Yeah.
They're starting to do it right. And um, uh, actually, I actually was out in China and Hong Kong with the fight choreographer and martial artist Eric Oram, who is actually part was has the same grandmaster as me, Grandmaster Chung, William Chung, and this other person that he is the main his master, his Sifu is Robert Downey Jr.
Oh
He's
wow.
Robert Downey Jr.'s master.
Wow.
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. is part of like my part of our school and all that stuff.
Wow,
And
that's huge.
yeah, and Robert Downey Jr. is a Wing Chun master.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, but when I saw that, I was like, someone, whoever's doing that, knows their stuff. And it turns out it's Eric Orm, who's part of the school and everything.
Awesome.
But he's a great fight choreographer.
Yeah, I
Um,
know the Deadpool movies, the person who directed, I think the second one he's the guy that did that movie Free Guy, like he's a former stunt coordinator.
yeah,
And you can
yeah.
tell there's a real, like he's a
I
real,
I can't remember his name right now, but I
yeah,
know.
it'll kind of mean the second. I think he did like Nobody and it was sort of involved the John Wick movies too, I think, but I can't remember
Yeah,
his
yeah,
name.
yeah. Very, very good fight choreographer. I still think Eric is the best, but uh, a great fight choreographer. But in that movie, Wolverine and uh, Deadpool, Wolverine, whatever, um, it was great. So I was satisfied as someone who's extremely well versed in that. I had a chance to. I started getting chances in film when I was an actor years ago.
Hmm.
And I was getting my waivers and stuff. You couldn't just pay to join the union back then. You had to
No.
earn shit. Um, and I was earning them. And I did independent films, and whenever I did martial arts or some kind of fighting on independent films, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, that looks so real," and it was because I had all that training.
Yeah, because you it
Um,
was.
yeah, but it was also frustrating when someone else was doing the choreography, and I was like, "No, no, 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 let's not do that. Come on,
Mhm,
that's just does not looking right."
mhm.
But anyway. But it's really good to see the fight choreography now in that film and all the other film. Most of the other films today, some still do garbage, but for the most part, it's good. That movie, I didn't mean to go on a tangent about that
No, no,
movie,
it's all good. It's
but it
amazing.
brought me in, and I don't want to give away anything, but if you're a lover of the 2000s, the 90s and 2000s comics, you know what I'm talking about because
Hmm.
obviously you've seen it. You get everything you could have wanted in some way. It's just if you haven't seen it, go see it. If you've seen it, go see it again. And because I also think that it is finally the finger on the pulse of, hey, we don't have to screw with stuff.
Hmm.
Just do what it is.
Yep.
It's okay to do the 90s stuff. It's
Hmm.
brutal. 90s stuff is usually a bit more brutal. And a lot of machismo in there and everything,
Hmm.
but and unapologetic,
Yeah.
uh, I'll
Wow.
say. But you know what? It's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
If people don't want that, they could look at other stuff and they
Yeah.
get all other and they get that from other series from Marvel and this and that. But if you want that thing and look at the absolute explosion of them, X-Men 90
Yeah.
97.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all nostalgia for that time period now.
It
So a
was
lot
it,
of that.
it, it kicked ass.
It did. Yeah. It was
That
awesome.
series kicked ass. I was like, oh my gosh. People are like, you got to watch it, guy. I'm like, I don't know, man. And started watching, I watched the first episode and I went, oh my gosh, this is X-Men 90s.
Hmm.
And it just continued to just get better and better. And I mean, I even saw Gambit in a half shirt. Like no one,
Yeah.
no one needs that. But the
Yeah.
fact that they had the nuts enough to do that and
Well,
Magneto, a
yeah.
50, whatever, 80, 60-year-old guy at the time he would have been, or whatever it would have been at the time. I don't know. Uh, he had, looked like he was in the gym
Yeah, I
24/7.
know. I like when they put him in his underwear for no reason and he's just like
Yeah, it's
shredded and
like,
you're like,
it's
yeah.
like, what?
Yeah.
But you know
But it
what?
was you're right, it was very nice. But the cool thing about it is it drew from everything. Like, I'm a big fan of Grant Morrison's run on the X-Men. I'm a big fan of him in general. But like his run on the X-Men, it took parts of that. It took parts of, the Cochrane costumes and all that stuff from back in the day. And like you get all this cool stuff. We get even the Inferno storyline from the 90s kind of mixed in there. Like all that stuff was
Oh,
just so cool.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Inferno. Yeah,
Yeah, it was just really neat to see all that kind of brought in and
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 and and
honored.
and the let's not forget about Larry Hama's
Of
stuff
course, yes.
writing that was in there with Silvestri
Right.
that was in there that he didn't get a credit at the end of the movie.
No, no, I don't think so.
No, he I saw Sal, I saw Herb.
Yeah.
He didn't get a credit at the end of that movie. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
why is Larry's name not in there? Because I'm working with Larry right now.
Well, put in a good word for me if you're talking to him because I sent him an email to try to get him on the show about you. It's always been a dream of mine, but I haven't heard from him yet. So
Well,
no worries.
sort of have him on here now because, uh, one of the things I wanted to talk about was my new campaign with Larry
Yeah,
Hama.
yeah. I was going to ask you what's next, so that would be great.
Uh, so Larry actually worked on that book Core
Hmm.
over at PKMM Entertainment, which you can still get if you contact Matthew Pilata on uh, Facebook, or you'll find him on Instagram maybe. Um, or you contact me on Instagram, say, hey, I want that book, Controlled Organic Robotics
Hmm.
Core. It's a nearly 200-page graphic novel. But Larry wrote about two-thirds of it. My son, who's a professional writer and screenwriter and all that, who's almost 34 now, he is a phenomenal writer and agreed to write on it originally. And started off with his partner Cody Chesakowski, and then Cody went on to do other things, and Guy stayed as a writer, and then continued to develop it all. And come near the beginning of the third issue, Larry Hama took over, and then he and I worked together. Not only, and Jerry B. Manis, who's a guy who works in my company, Good Alien, and is a fantastic award-winning author of prose novels, um, agreed to script a lot of it. And Larry was continuing the plot, writing new plot, and laying out the story in layouts of pencil. He would send it to me, and I would draw it up the way I do. I'm pretty good at drawing. Uh,
Mhm.
and then it would get inked by Sal Buscema and some from Scott Hanna, and then some guest inkers. I would have guest inkers come in. But that started me working with Larry. Then we worked on another series that'll be in development maybe next year and the year after. But I said to Larry, because I started a company called Good Alien, and we're working with Hollywood and such like that.
Nice.
Uh, and my son is a writer, Jerry Manis is a writer, but Larry, I said, Larry, do you want to do so? Because everyone does stuff I want to do. Like I instigate the projects and the people we work with a lot of the people that I've worked with over the last 12 years is all mostly my instigation. But I said, Larry, what do you want to do, man? Do you have something you want to do? Let's make that happen. And he said, well, because again, Larry and I are pretty tight friends at this point.
Mhm.
He says, I got this thing, Mounties versus Werewolves. And I'm like, Mounties versus Werewolves. So I've seen robots versus this versus that, and zombies versus that. I said, but if Larry is writing it,
Mhm.
you better believe that the best writing of any this versus that is going to be from Larry Hama.
Yeah.
And Larry, it took a little while to get this thing off the ground. There were so many things going on. Uh, this was right at well, my wife was still going through medical problems, and while I was transitioning, just at the end of COVID, people were just starting to get back, figuring out what's going on. A lot of production shut down during that because nobody could promote and all that. And it was a whole new thing because we decided to do it as a Kickstarter. And we're not a Kickstarter company. I go build teams of the greatest people on the fucking planet, and then I show it to companies, and they go, yeah, we'd love to do it. They fund it, and we do it. This was different but the idea is that Larry and I own this. Larry doesn't own the GI Joe stuff. They have treated him well. Uh, um, um, uh, uh, Skybound treating him very well. Love him. We all love Larry. Larry has an incredible fan base, but I don't I don't want to take anything from Larry by supporting the companies because Larry wrote it. Larry created it. Larry did. Nobody else did.
Mhm.
So I'm not gonna I don't want to take anything away from Larry when people say, oh, again, I appreciate that the companies do it, but companies, we have to remember that those companies work for profit, not
Mhm.
because they can't wait to just do something because they love the project. They do. I'm not saying they don't, but there's a bottom line. They're in a business, and that business is making money through comic books and
Mhm.
graphic novels and such and merch. Uh, but Larry does it for the love of the work.
Mhm.
And that GI Joe is Larry Hama. That's it. It's Herb Trimpe too. Herb drew all those issues,
Mhm.
but but Larry Hama is the pulse of GI Joe. No one, no matter how much they work on it, will ever capture the king of GI Joe besides Larry.
Mhm.
Not possible. It's
No.
just not possible. Um, but Larry has all this history in the G.I. Joe stuff, but he's got stuff he hasn't ever been able to do quite yet
Hmm.
in different genres, but with that same energy. So he says, I want to do Mounties versus Werewolves. Here's what I'm going to do. And of course, it's set right after World War One. So, the weapons they're using some of them are from World War One, and the backstory is, of the characters comes from World War One, and all this stuff, trenches, it gives him the opportunity to do things that he might have done in G.I. Joe, but in that world.
Hmm.
Now, no one knows it better than him. And Larry's good, but Larry can now build that world. So, and me, I'm a character designer. I've been designing characters for the indie companies and stuff like that, and with John Carpenter and all those companies for years. And as a toy designer, I understand characters. I understand character design. And one of my strongest suits is horror because I know horror. I worked with John and Sandy Carpenter for 5 years, and I know horror. I've been involved in horror, and all of my industry professionals would say, "Oh, Dorian Sr. is a monster creator. He's just designs incredible creatures and monsters." So I'm like, how could there be a better union than Larry and I doing something called Mounties versus Werewolves?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're just not going to get a better union.
No, not at all. It's such a cool concept and such a fun. I'm just kind of glancing at you got one more backer, by the way. I'm backing you right now. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, as a Canadian, I feel like it's in my blood. I need to have this
Oh
story.
yeah,
So
and there's a lots of tiers to choose from. I tell people to find a tier that they're willing to do at the highest they can do because you're
mhm,
going to get so much more out of it.
mhm,
You could we're happy for anyone to if people have given donations of $1. Some
mhm.
people have given donate. Somebody just went and sent us like $150. Do good.
Yeah,
They're not horror fans.
no,
Uh, but we'll accept it. We think that's great. But there's a lot in it because what happens with this is Larry is now not just getting some royalty check based on a 40,000 issue sale, which a lot of people don't know. Back in the early days, they had to sell like 40,000 issues before you got royalties.
mhm.
So that's a lot today. And a lot of those contracts stand as the contracts that they were. I'm not saying they haven't given people some money here and there.
Yes,
My stuff is printed all over the world on things. You can go to Disney World and see artwork that I worked on, packaging art in Disney in Five Below that on toys and trading cards that come with toys and in coloring books and in on products, on T-shirts, on hats, cups, mugs, uh, Hot Wheels cars, you name it, you don't know it's me. That's why a
mhm.
lot of people are like, well, where'd you go when you left Marvel here until when you started comics again? I'm like, well, they don't put your name on that stuff.
No, no,
So I was all over the place.
yeah,
Millions and millions of people have had my toys in their hands. They've
hmm,
had the WWF action figures, the Tick,
hmm,
and during the times of Hercules and Xena and all this stuff, and ponytails and all that stuff. They've had all this stuff, but it's just doesn't have my name on it. But
yeah.
Bounties vs. Werewolves is live right now. It's doing very well. I haven't seen where it's at,
It's pretty
but
close. You're pretty close.
yeah, yeah. But we
Yep,
need to go to the goal and beyond.
yep.
And what's going to happen is everybody who's a creator gets treated very well. But what happens is Larry and I own it. This is the time where Larry will own something that everyone can contribute to the guy they love. I'm not saying they don't love me, but let's face it, Larry Hama is an absolute genius. And he is a beloved guy and rightfully so. Um, and Larry deserves to own things. Larry and I own this. And wherever it goes, Larry and I own it. So, and I have ties with I do toys. I have a toy company called Bamco Toys, Inc. Everyone check out Bamco Toys Inc. and see all the things that we're doing with that. Um, but go to the Kickstarter of of Mounties versus Werewolves.
Hmm.
Um, um, and we would like you to, if you enjoy anything that Larry's ever done, if he's ever done anything for you, for G.I. Joe or anything or Wolverine, let's give this guy 75 years old at this point. He's given us so much to enjoy from then till now. I don't know anyone who's done the things that he's done. And there, uh, and I really know how to draw freaking monsters. So you don't have to worry about it. Whenever I draw werewolves, everyone goes, "Oh my gosh, it's awesome!" And I'm like, "It's just a werewolf, dude." They're like, "No, it's not just a werewolf. It's so cool." I'm a horror guy, and I know my stuff. And I love this industry. I love the people. I love collecting. I love comics and graphic novels. I love creating new characters. Um, I love developing them into new types of characters. Um, I love putting out new things and new series for people. And Mounties vs. Werewolves is going to have the heart and love, joy and professionalism that you would expect from any kind of the greatest stuff you can find. It has all that. And Kevin Conrad's my inker, who's a fantastic musician, who worked on Kiss, Psycho Circus
Oh
over at
wow.
Medina and all kinds of other stuff. But he's in that horror type realm and stuff, and he and I click very well. If you look at the cover A, that's Kevin's inks over me.
Yeah.
Uh, which that, by the way, we weren't going to do it, but that cover is available for sale. Money will go to the campaign. I think it's something like 2 grand. When you're talking about, Larry, me, and Kevin, you're just not that much money yet, actually. I'm sure somebody's going to wind up picking it up. Um, uh, we got Kelly Jones doing a cover.
Yeah, it's
We
gorgeous.
Yeah, we got me and Larry, who did the hardcover. Larry did the layout breakdown. I did the final art. I was the inker too, penciler inker on that. It's a black and white cover. People love black and white art, and they
Mhm.
seem to more and more today. They love they love to see what is it that we're producing as black and white art too.
Mhm.
So and we've got a lot of other covers on there for people to see. And Spawn, Mark Spears, he's now doing Marvel, DC, and all that stuff, and Mark Spears Monsters and all that, and Scott Hanna and J.K. Woodward and
Oh, I've had JK in the show. He's great.
yeah, man. I
Yep.
mean, you said you've had J.K.
Yeah.
on the show. Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. He's great.
Uh,
Great
yeah,
conversation.
great, great. So really great talent. Uh, um, and you really got to check it out. I really support I really thank you for your support, by the way.
No,
Thank you for having me on, and please
no
spread the
problem.
word for us. And Manny's vs. Werewolves is something that Larry was interviewed, and they said, "Well, where do you see this going?" He said, "Well, I see it just continuing."
Awesome. It looks fun. It
So
looks like a ton of fun, and I'm definitely excited to read it.
my goal is, as the company Good Alien, to put that out. Is we've already gotten contacted by Hollywood, to be honest. I'm not giving away any details, but they're like, you and Larry,
Yeah.
you like I said, a lot of those guys know me already.
Hmm.
Um, I was in the green room recently at Dragon Con, and there were some famous actors in there with us. And I was, one guy said, "Yeah, hey man, uh, I know what you're doing. I know you." And I was like, "Wait, really? You care?" I didn't know that so many of those guys love that stuff.
Hmm.
They love comics just like me. They love collecting just like me. And I'm like, wow, it really is a comic world right now. Oh, the geek has inherited the earth.
He
And
certainly has.
so Manny's vs. Werewolves is something that's put together And it's going to be the love of Larry Hama and the history. He'll put histories in there. It takes place in the 1920s, and he's got the perfect place. The perfect place. Mounties versus werewolves. Mounties in the fighting nefarious werewolves, or are they? Yes, they are. But who, who are the werewolves? Because werewolves have human form. So it's like, wait a minute, wait, who is that? So all that type of espionage type of stuff that could happen,
Hmm.
oh, you'll see that. And you'll
Awesome.
be like, you might not know who's a werewolf and who isn't. Who's
Oh,
the good
man.
guy? Who's the bad guy?
Man,
Who's, you know?
it sounds
Yeah.
like a blast. I'm excited. I'm very excited. All right. Well, make sure everybody go check out the Kickstarter. I'll definitely put it on my pages and get it out there as well. I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you so
No,
much,
thank you
Guy,
very
for
much.
being
Yeah,
on the show.
I have more interviews and stuff anyway.
Oh,
So
yes. Well, it's so much appreciated having you on the show, man. It's been a real honor, and I'm a huge fan. So thank you, and I look forward to the future work.
thank you, man.
All right.
And anyone watching, please like and share. And if you would like to promote Larry, promote me, promote Kelly Jones, promote the artist, promote horror, promote all the things we love in entertainment, and help to be at the forefront of creating a brand new property by some of the world's greatest creators that will be able, you guys can help make this something that lasts years and years and years and years, where you'll wind up getting toys, you'll get collectibles, movies, TV, posters, all the stuff that we love. It'll be part of it. So you're at the forefront, though. How cool is that? Can you imagine if somebody said, do you want to help make X-Men happen? Do you want to help make GI Joe happen? You'd be like, oh man, I want to be right there.
Yeah.
Kickstarter lets that happen. It's
Awesome.
great. So
Awesome.
see you guys there, and thanks a lot, man.
Oh,
Really,
no, thank you. I'll be sharing all that stuff, and I'll definitely keep in touch. Thanks again, Guy. It's been a pleasure.
thanks. All
Bye
right.
bye. There you have it, my conversation with Guy Dorian Sr. Be sure to check out the Kickstarter for Mounties versus Werewolves. Be sure to check out his website and the toy line that he is working on. Be sure to check out all of his various projects. They're all very cool. And yeah, we got to support each other when it comes to the arts. We talk about that in the conversation. You got to get out there. You got to support each other. You got to give the creators that are creating the things you love the love. You have to give them love to get out there and keep creating and making the projects they want to make happen. And boy, I wasn't lying. I did back that project because Werewolves versus Mounties, or is it Mounties versus Werewolves? Sorry, is a super cool looking project. The art's amazing. It's 48 pages, so it's bigger than normal. You get quite a bit for your investment in this book, and it is super super cool. So join me and get over there and give that a like. Not a like. Jesus, what am I talking about? Get out there and give it, back it. Back. That's what you do with Kickstarters. You back them. Get out there and back it. It's a super cool project, and we need to make it a reality. We got to get out there and support. Even if you miss the Kickstarter, then make sure to buy it at your local retailers. Ask your retailers about it. Get out there and purchase it wherever you can when it comes out. All right, so I don't have my next guest lined up 100% yet. I have a feeling I know who it is, but until I record it, I don't tell you. That's how I do things, just in case something happens. People cancel last minute, things come up. You never know. So just check social media to see who our next guest is. In the meantime, make sure to head over to Guy's website and to Kickstarter to check out the Mounties vs. Werewolves project and everything else he has coming. He's got some beautiful artwork, and as I said before, he's worked on a lot of things that were big to me as a kid, wrestling toys and New Warriors comics and a lot of other things as well. He had his hand in some of the Clone Wars Spider-Man stuff too, which is up there as well. So anyway, do be sure to do all that, and in the meantime, stay safe, read some comics, and go outside. The weather's getting cool here, so you got to go enjoy the warm weather we got while we got it. See you next time. The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.